Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas here with Dr. Jesse Ayers from Malone University. Just won the, you're going to have to say the word again, ZPAC?
ZPIC.
ZPIC.
It's Dr. ZPIC who sponsored the competition.
Oh, that makes sense.
Lyle ZPIC, lovely man. We got to have a lunch with Dr. ZPIC and his wife and talk about music. It was a very fun time. He's a cardiologist, but knows a lot about music and opera.
And thank goodness that he does, because Jesse Ayers was a recipient of first place for Opera Kansas, and recently was out in Wichita where you received the honor. Have you gotten to see this performed?
Twice now. It was done at Indiana Wesleyan, the premiere, and that was the group I mentioned earlier that commissioned it. And then, actually 3 times. Opera Kansas did 2 back-to-back performances in Wichita. It's quite interesting. It was like our Canton First Friday. It was Wichita last Friday. And keeping with what Opera Kansas does of taking opera out to the people instead of waiting for people to come to them. So this was in a downtown business and in a slightly larger back room, but not at all a concert venue, just, a large room where you could have a reception or set up for a dinner. And they did it there, brought in an electric piano and so a simple set. And some people knew about it. Some people were just walking by on the street and went, "Oh, what's all that?" and came walking in. Some people who had never seen opera came in and thought, "Well, if I'd known it was like this, I might have been coming more often." And, after the performance, the president of the Opera Association was toward the back. I was seated in the front for this, and she said there were some people wiping tears from their eyes. Now, that's from the impact of the story, but to say, okay, they made a connection with people. Some people came in and said, "Oh, I really like this."
What an amazing way to tell this story, too. Before the break, we left with the idea that Elizabeth had to talk Mary into spying, using her incredible gifts and her intellect to spy. How did you put yourselves into their heads and make that happen musically?
Well, I did give that a lot of thought because that's not known. So, so my opera is like a work of historical fiction. I know these people actually lived. I know what they did, how they came about it. We do not know. So I did some imagining, and I turned it that it's actually Mary's idea.
Wow.
So mine, the way I've set this, because it was supposed to be a 5-minute piece. It ended up being 18 minutes. So you want to tell the story as quickly as you can without leaving too much out, but without having dead space that the audience wishes it were shorter.
And you want it to do it justice.
Yes. And so I set it as a single scene. So when you watch it, as though you've just turned on the TV and you're seeing a single segment from a miniseries where you get enough information to say, "Oh, I understand what's happening and I understand what they're planning." And if there were more, I will tune in next week to see the rest. So it's like a single scene, 18 minutes, set in their parlor. And initially, there is sort of some chit-chat and some of the, Mary saying, "Well, did that Tennessee bourbon loosen up any tongues last night?" And Bet say, "Oh, land sakes, old Captain Peters from the War Department wanted to impress me, and he told me everything about Longstreet's strength and position."
Wow.
So, it's to give the audience some of that information. But then Bet notices that Mary's very worried about something but trying to hide it. And they're very good friends. Mary was born in that household, was born into slavery, so she had known her, by this time, Mary's about 20, which that's still very young to be going into the White House saying, "I'm going to risk my life," into the Confederate White House. But so in this conversation, Bet says, "I want to know what's worrying you. We're friends. Don't hide this from me. I'm a big girl. I can take it and I can help you." And she says, "Well, something's on my mind. God showed me something I can do to help my people and help fight against slavery, but I don't like it much. You're not going to like this none, and I don't like it much myself." And that the fruit, there's low-hanging fruit for the plucking, but the fruit's got a bitter taste. And so as they talk, she says, "What God has shown me, there's something I can do that nobody else can do. If this is going to be done, I'm going to be the one to have to do it." And so eventually she says, "What I'm going to have to do is go back into slavery." And then there's a, "Mary, no, you can't do this." "Well, I have to." "No, you can't." Why? And she said, "Because it's the only way." And she said, "Well, how can going back to slavery help your people?" And she said, "Well, it's because where I'm going to be working. It's a big gray house up on Choctaw Hill on East Clay Street," which that's the address of the Davis home that's still there. And, Bet responds, "Dear God in heaven, you're you're going into the Confederate White House?
Yeah.
And then she catches on like, oh, you've gotten mine to spy like I've been spying. And she says, yeah. And so then she reveals that to her, that here's the plan and I can do this. And then along the way, she has several pretty juicy arias, I think. One of talking about my people been dying for years. Because Bet has said, if they catch you, and she said, Miss Bet, my people been dying for years, year after year, month after month, day after day. And now something's laid right at my feet where I can do something about it. Am I going to turn tail like old Jonah and run to Tarshish? No, ma'am. This here Esther is going to rise up. So that's that crisis moment that comes near the end.
Powerful words. I love the way that you've put this all into words. But I'm also thinking, you're a man and you're having to think of what's possible for a woman to be able to sing. Are you involved with the world of opera enough to know, okay, a soprano can go here and then they can blend this way, but putting that all into women's voices two ways, the woman's physical voice and the woman's emotional voice, all at the same time. How do you make that work?
That is a challenge. When I saw portraits of women and thinking, well, I'm not one, and can I write this? But it's like an author, film writer, you try and, I spent a lot of time trying to put myself in imagining this scene and then think, well, if I were this person, how I'd be thinking. If I were the other person, what would I be thinking? And then a lot of polishing. I've been married for 30-something years now.
That helps a little bit, yes.
And so that gives me a little insight. But anyway, so it was really trying to imagine what it would be like. As far as the technical things, I've had a lot of training in how to compose. But even that, there's a learning curve. In the first version, we're in about the fifth or sixth revision. It's getting to be a joke around the performers, like, oh, this is Beneath Suspicion 3.7, 3.8. And as you revise things to say, that didn't work so well. The first version, I had them a little too high, way too long. And that was a challenge. Say, now that I've already written it, I need to do some rewriting to get the voices back in a little more reasonable range.
Oh, all those things that happen, you don't know until you're doing it. How
you
that
have to
would
hear
work.
it.
Yeah.
And how does this work for real singers?
Do the performers get some input when you meet with them? How did this all happen, of selecting the performers? And you've seen it twice. Was it the same performers both times, or was it different people?
No, in the premiere in Indiana was the Soprani Compagni. So that is Dr. Tammy Huntington, Dr. Lisa Dawson, and their a collaborative pianist, Dr. Phoenix Kim Park, excuse me. And so they performed. We were, my wife and I were there for that, and so we had 2 or 3 rehearsals with them prior to the performance where we do a little give and take. Well, let's try this if that's not working, or they say, well, this is not the most grateful line right here for voice. So there's some give and take, and then plus my input on, well, I had more in mind, this is the emotion behind it, so interpret it this way, just the way a stage director would be working with actors and say, well, try this. And then in Wichita, that was obviously a different cast. That were the fine folks in Wichita. And that was Shelley Winters and Jasmine Jackson and Sherry Pilgreen, pianist, and then their artistic director, Paul Brodeen Smith, and wonderful musicians to work with.
At that point, is it written in stone, or does it continue to, is it in flux?
I'm laughing because they just got what I hope is the final revision yesterday.
Okay.
So it's already been done. And there was just one, and now this was a very small spot, one where I thought, I don't really quite have the right rhythm. You have to do a lot of thinking on a line, like what is the natural rhythm somebody would do this, so you don't just take words and stick them to notes, but so that the notes follow, not literally, but somewhat the normal voice inflection and where you would go up and where you would go down, and the right rhythm. And
breathing, they've got to breathe at some point.
Singers have that habit, I've noticed.
That's right.
Pianists, not so much. But so anyway, there was one little spot I thought, okay, one more, because this is maybe the 5th revision. They commented on it in Wichita when somebody asked them what it's like to work. Said, well, we've had 4 or 5 different versions of this, and we learn one. And the different versions are pretty close, but then you've learned a passage and relearn it. But they were very gracious to give with me. It's like, yeah, I know I do a lot of revision, but then again, it's, as the Old Testament says, to work with a perfectionist composer is both a blessing and a curse.
There you go.
The blessing, the piece gets better, but the curse is you get you get a lot of different versions to keep up with.
Well, good writing's in the rewriting, isn't it? So there you go.
Well, and rewriting is not unusual. Broadway shows open.
That's right.
They open out of town, they go through rewrites. Even after a show opens, they will delete songs, put in new songs, change the show around. So, and that's when it's in production and people are buying tickets and they're making a day change and say, come early this afternoon.
That's right. Absolutely. We're speaking with Dr. Jesse Ayers from Malone University, the recent winner of the ZPIC Opera Kansas Award. I hope that's close enough to what first place of how many entries from around the world?
I don't know how many. It was a number, I don't know, 30 or 40.
From around the world. You're interested in that era because I'm thinking this topic is not new to you because another one of your amazing works is The Passion of John Brown, which was produced nearby here. It was done by the Cleveland Symphonic Orchestra, I believe?
No, Akron Symphony commissioned
Akron Symphony, thank you. Okay.
John Brown was from Akron. John Brown, the famous Civil War abolitionist, actually pre-war, he was hung before the war started, but he's considered the
one of the catalysts of everything.
the fuse that lit the Civil War.
Well, I know our friends in Hudson, Owen Brown, his son. There's an Owen Brown Street not far from there. So I know Ohio.
John Brown
Ohio has that
was
connection.
born in Hudson, and then he came back for a while and worked for Simon Perkins, the Perkins Street that's in Akron. And then that was just done last year by the Michigan Philharmonic and a little to the west of where Detroit is. They serve 2 or 3 cities.
Two things that come to mind. First of all, what is it that draws you to that era so much, and what those people were going through, and that battle of independence for people of color?
Well, I do like Civil War history. I would not pretend to be a historian on the subject, but I've read some about it. With John Brown, I mean, the real impetus was it was commission. We'd like to do this, so I needed to learn a good bit about him. And then in this case, a commission to write a work, and then my wife saying, here's a really good story. And I thought, oh, that would be a good one. And then once I saw the story, I was thinking, and I do know enough about the Civil War that I can bring in enough things to make it flow. Like for when she says, yes, Captain Peters told me all about the strength and position of Longstreet. And for your listeners that don't know, General Longstreet's one of the generals, and that's how they would refer to his corps. In the South, they referred to them by the name. They'd say, well, where's Longstreet? Meaning, where's Longstreet's army?
When do we get to hear it here? That's my second part of that question. It's got to be so gratifying to have your work be performed all around the country and beyond.
We're hoping to get it done at Malone next year. It may be that Soprani Compagni, the group from Indiana Wesleyan, will be coming here to do a recital in which they would certainly do that work. And then we have some amazing vocal talent among our voice students at Malone right now. And so if not one, then the other, and perhaps both. I already have 2 of our students in mind that I think would just do a bang-up job on this.
Touch on that real quickly in our closing seconds here. Really, I think people would be so surprised about the incredible opera voices that are coming out of Malone University, aren't they?
We are just on a roll with that. Our lead vocal instructor is Cynthia Volschlager. And she just has some amazing students and is doing amazing things with them.
Yeah,
We're having quite a few of our singers win regional and statewide contests. So, and that's with our singers in competition with the conservatories in Ohio that our kids are winning those.
That's right.
We're very proud of them.
And among their blessings is you. Dr. Jesse Ayers, thank you so much for what you're doing and for bringing such awesome culture right here to our community.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and be part of the community.